The information shared on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While we discuss topics related to mental health, well-being, and emotional support, we are not providing therapy or medical services. Always seek the advice of your physician, psychologist, psychiatrist, or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health condition. If you are in crisis, feeling unsafe, or need immediate support, please contact a mental health professional or emergency services in your area. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations or institutions.
Get inspired, get motivated with M.A.Y.A and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A_Akai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 90 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. We are pushing through with these episodes, and I am really excited about this particular episode because I'm getting back to the ambition stage. And if you recall, that's something I launched in August of last year, where I brought on 13 individuals that had very powerful stories, and it aligned with what I talk about. The reason I do this podcast is I want to bring what is often a difficult conversation, which is mental wellness. And I want to bring it to you from a fresh and forward thinking perspective, because everybody at some point has difficulties in their life. But back here, we want to pull back that doubt of self-sabotage and doubt that we often have to help you to figure out what is your ambition and then how to harness that motivation to get to that satisfaction, not just in life, but I want you to feel that satisfaction in your everyday life. So with that being said, if you are a first-time listener, welcome aboard. I always tell people just buckle up for safety because it could be a bumpy ride, because you actually might have a revelation about something, an epiphany, and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that applied to me. I thought that was other people's problems, not mine. So I just like to give the warning that we are forward thinking here. So we want to do the work. So you might have an epiphany about something. And by the way, I'm always excited that I'm gathering people from all the places. Welcome to the M.A.Y.A Ambition Show, people from India, Canada, the Philippines, the UK. Matter of fact, I know my UK listener. She's been spreading the word since she's been in London for school. I appreciate that support. That's the difference. Speaking of support, if you are a returning listener or viewer, I always appreciate that support. You know how we do it here. You don't have to buckle up for safety because you know what to expect. So take this roughly 45 to 60 minutes, however this goes. Find that private spot for you. This is a self-care moment, and I want you to focus on you. So maybe grab a pencil and paper, jot down some things that you maybe want to reflect on, grab your beverage of choice, and get ready for what is going to be the next best installment of the ambition stage for 2026. With that being said, let's jump into this. My next guest, Bishop Kevin Foreman. I love people who have energy. And this is the embodiment of when passion meets purpose and gets infused with motivation, what it looks like. So Bishop Foreman is known as the people's bishop. And by the time this interview is over, you're going to know why. But let me give you some, I got to give him, I got to, build it up, give it the big, bring him onto the stage, because what he's doing is amazing. So everybody has their beginnings, their origin stories. Born in Denver, Colorado, raised in Orange Mound, Memphis, Tennessee. So everybody's got their stories. We're going to learn more about that. But here's the thing. In his journey, he has become an influential pastor. He is a church planter. Of course, he's a bishop with more than 25 years of vocational ministry. Now, here's the things I want you to pay attention to, where that journey kind of has taken him. In 2006, he founded Harvest Church, which is a multicultural, non-denominational church that has multiple locations, Atlanta and Denver, and of course online, which means the global reach is there. So you don't have to be in those places to get this message. All you have to do is jump online. So there's that piece right there. But The key thing to know is he's also done so many things above and beyond that. He is the founder of the Harvest Leadership Network and Harvest Bible College, as well as he's an in-demand speaker because he's here. He's a success coach helping people to navigate those life, learning about their spirituality and leadership. He's a 5-time author with some very powerful topics. I can't wait to talk to him about 2 like specific books, Making Money Moves and The Sins of Our Fathers, Breaking Generational Curses. Now I know right now some people are saying, wait, this is a bishop talking about money? Yes, this is something, because when you walk in faith, because this episode is about faith, passion, and purpose. Remember I say mental wellness covers multiple domains: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial, social. It's your mindset. And if you're not moving with and purpose, how you move may not feel authentic to you for many reasons. This is why he's here. He's a philanthropist. In 2008, he launched the Harvest Foundation, in which they have provided more than 208,000 pounds of food and worked with missions, donating more than over $600,000. This is work, people. And I'm saying all this, you should say, well, this is also an entrepreneur. But guess what? He became an entrepreneur when he was an adolescent. We got to give him his final accolades. The bishop obviously loves music, so the Harvest Worship has released 7 singles, and he has been honored by the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2003, and he's also received a distinguished honor as Colorado's Pastor of the Year in 2020, and in October 16th of that year, they had Bishop Kevin Foreman Day in Denver and Aurora, Colorado. Now, that's a person who's doing work and being noticed, but the key thing is all the lives that he has touched in all that work he has done. So with that being said, without further ado, let's bring to the stage Bishop Kevin Foreman.
Wow, it is so good to be with you. What an introduction. I mean, you are obviously like a fish in water when you do what you do. And so thank you for having me. And thank you so much for, I said this to you before we started, what you do, because you are obviously creating conversations that are a catalyst for transformation in people's lives. And you said a word that when you said it, like we call it in church, I quicken when you said it, get a revelation, because revelation is how information applies to your specific situation.
Mhm.
And so when you see how this applies to you, it becomes something that is absolutely transformational. So excited about our conversation today. I know we're going to hit some good stuff.
I am looking forward to this for so many reasons. I'm gonna tell you something. Like when I was like reading your bio, I was like, "Oh, I got some work to do. He's about to make me work to get this all in today." But I'm gonna do it. I was like, and you know what? You are my first guest that I did not take the time to meet with you before. I was like, I want this to be organic. I love organic conversations, and we
Yes,
talked
me too.
about that.
Me
I
too.
used to pre-meet with people. I said, you know what? I'm gonna walk on faith on this one and see if
There
I
you
can
go.
just jump into this conversation with Bishop Foreman and make it work. So
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you know what I love too about even just how we got into this conversation and into this space and place is that when you mention, the bio and all of that, I'm the type of person, I am so focused on my next. Many times when I do these interviews and things like that, and I'm hearing all of that and it's recounting it, I'm like, oh yeah, we did that. Oh yeah, we did that. I'm so focused on the future, so focused on what's next that while I celebrate what's happened, I'm always creating what's next. And I think that's what keeps my energy so high. People always say, is your energy always like this? You always like this? My energy is high because I'm always moving to the next thing. It gives me a source of encouragement, motivation, and hope. If you're not working on something, then I believe that's the number one reason why people begin to get in deep anxiety, deep depressions, deep dark spaces and places in life, because you're not working on something. What's ahead is better than what's been.
that's true. You mentioned something I talk a lot about with people, which is energy.
Yep.
And I always tell people how important it is to protect your energy.
Yes.
Because we live in a world where so much can pull from you. We wear many hats. We can be spouses, we're someone's, child. We might be a parent. We are an employee. We are a friend. We are so many things. And all of those roles that we have pull so much energy. And what you just said, I hope people understand that. You're preserving and protecting because you know exactly where you want that energy to go.
Exactly. And you know what? I'll give you a simple example. I remember I used to keep my TV on throughout the day. So during the pandemic, moved from working at the campus daily there in Denver before we moved our headquarters down to Atlanta, Georgia. And so, with this work from home thing became a thing. And I would normally keep it on the news, one of the news stations, one of the cable news stations all day. And I noticed, I was like, I am just becoming negative and just sullen and just, I said, why? I said, what's going on? Nothing. I'm not different. I said, there's something in this atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just the news. But the problem is that if news doesn't have the purpose of informing you, but not the purpose of transforming you or making you conform to the narrative or the negativity or what have you, just listening to the news can be something that drains your energy. Just doom scrolling on social media can drain your energy. And I'm all about atmosphere. So if you were to come into any area of my home, my office, anywhere I'm at, you got swords, you got lions, you got gladiator stuff, because it reminds me to be a warrior. It reminds me that every day it's a fight, but it's a fight that I will win. And so I love what you're talking about when it comes to energy, because sometimes it's very subtle, seemingly innocuous, very subversive things that can creep in. And before you know it, it's drained you. And you're like, why do I feel like this? And why am I in this space? And sometimes it's just as simple as what you got playing on the background.
It's just that simple. And
Yeah.
what I love, and I love your picture in the back, love lions. I'm a huge elephant person. You won't fully see it in my office. You'll see a hint of them, but I love them. They're
Yeah.
they're, they're loyal. They're
Yeah.
they're patient. They're methodical. They're
Yeah.
just amazing. We can learn a lot from animals if we just actually opened our eyes a bit, how
So
they
true.
how they move. But you said something that I think people need to capture. It's about people, places, and things.
Mhm.
Literally, and what you just talked about, you surround yourself. You create
Mhm.
an environment that embodies like energy that's positive. You actually found the things that were negative and began to remove them from your space. And I often say to people, that actual mindset, you have to look at, who do you associate with? Who are your people? Two, places. Where do you move? Where are you putting yourself? Are you around positive people, or are you around a lot of negativity? Sometimes you can't help it. Let's just say you have a job place and it's not the best place to be, but I
Mhm.
always tell people, sometimes you got to remember, is this a place I should stay if it's not
Mhm.
healthy for me? And then,
Right.
of course, things. What do we allow to come into our lives? Like you said, the news,
Yeah.
our social media. There are so many things that can take up your time and your energy that you don't know. So I love how you pointed out, you create that
Yeah.
space you're going to immerse yourself in to shift that mindset to be more positive.
So true. And I love what you said even about the job, because for many people, it is, I got this coworker, I got this supervisor, I got this manager. I would add people, places, things. I would add ideas, because sometimes the issue isn't the individual, it's the ideas from the individual. And so I can be in an environment and not have to receive anything. There doesn't have to be this osmosis that's going on, or something is being transferred to me from the environment. Sometimes you got to be light in darkness and not let that darkness get in. Sometimes you got to be, the joy and a bunch of sadness and not let that sadness get in. And so the simple hack for me is to remind myself whenever I find something like that happening, because you deal with a lot of different things. There's, as you mentioned, so many different hats. So every hat's a
Mhm.
different environment. My general ethos is that I am the thermostat. I set the temperature. I am not the thermometer. I don't need to read the room, nor do I need to take the temperature of the room. The
Mm,
room is going to adjust to me. And some people say
mm,
that's arrogant. They'll say that's too. Say whatever you want to say. I'm not going in a room and letting anybody move my furniture, or let anybody move my attitude, or let anybody pull me into their street fights. Everybody watching, you've got a purpose that's much bigger than little street fights that people try to pull you in with their attitudes and their innuendo and their
mm.
microaggressions and all these things. I'm not coming into your little street fight. I'm gonna adjust this room, and everything in it's gonna adjust to me. Or what I'll do is I'll decide that this is a room I don't need to be in.
See, you know what? And what you said, it is very easy to take that and say,
Mhm.
God, if I move like that, that sounds so arrogant or
Mhm.
conceited. Whereas people often can't distinguish between confidence and
Yes.
understanding. When you understand yourself and you feel authentic, you don't feel a need to make those adjustments to accommodate other people. Now, what that doesn't mean is you're not setting out to make other people uncomfortable.
Right.
This means that I'm going to live my truth. I can still respect people because I have good emotional intelligence.
Yep.
So just because I am celebrating and elevating me
Yep.
does not mean I cannot do that with you. And I
Yes.
love that you just said that. I'm like, I am not the thermometer. I love that because that's a
Yep.
whole other way to look at it. All
Yep.
right. So let me ask you this question.
Yep.
Everybody has their humble beginnings, and you are
Yeah.
now the amazing and illustrious. And I say that with pure love
Oh,
because I
thank you.
admire, I'm not saying that like just, I mean, seriously, because I love what you have done. Because everything we see the outcome, right? The actions and what the outcomes are. But what we never see is kind of what the start of
Mhm.
this is. So
Mhm.
before there was Bishop Kevin Foreman, there was just Kevin Foreman,
Yeah.
who, was born in Denver, Colorado, grew
Yeah.
up in Orange Mound, Memphis, Tennessee. That's a different
Yeah.
way of saying Memphis. I was like, are those two different places? Because I was
Yeah.
like, not familiar. But tell me about you growing up and what
Yeah.
laid you down this path of faith. Because I believe that when people walk in faith, it is not by accident.
Yep. Yep. So true. So, the reason I say Orange Man is because as people ever, we live in a Google and AI society where people go, where is that? So I want them to go see where it is. And so
Ah,
Orange Mound was this community in Memphis that immediately post slavery in America was one of the many Black Wall Streets. Like all of the Black Wall Streets, through systematic and intentional deconstruction, bad policy, red line policies that were instituted systemically, it was dismantled and turned into one of the areas that you often see that accompanies the inner city. So gangs and drugs and all of those things. So that was the environment that I saw around me. And I knew early on, I said, I'm in this, but I don't have to be this. I don't have to become what I've beheld. And so the joke is, I came out of my mom's womb with a Bible and a briefcase. That I had this affinity towards spirituality and I had this affinity towards business and entrepreneurship and success and leadership. And I grouped those things all together because they all really were just a tapestry that all really were interwoven together. And a lot of people see those things as separate. I didn't see them that way. I always saw those two things as converged. Like some people are taught if you're going to be spiritual, you can't be successful. And I said, well, why not? And if you're going to be successful, you can't be spiritual. And there's a scripture that speaks to that. There's several that do, but one of my favorites, Revelation 5:10, says he makes us kings and priests. And one person, there's a king and a priest. There's a spiritual side, there's a successful side. That means I can go up in the spirit and I can go into the boardroom and get the deal done. And so I think for many people that
mm,
that disconnect is what creates a lot of the issues that some people have around spirituality and faith and all that today. It's because it's like I want to do well, but I've been taught that if I do well, something's wrong. Lies. I want to shine my light, but I've been taught if my light's too bright, I need to bring it down. Lies. Jesus literally said, you are a light on a hill, go shine. So I just took what he said and I'm shining. And I'm always striving to get better. I honestly, this is my truth. I don't see myself as having arrived. I see myself as simply scratching the surface of the things that I'm going to do. There's more life ahead of me than behind me. And so I'm looking forward to that. And growing up in that environment, I was different. I was a different kind of kid. I was the kind of kid that I quickly learned that the people I wanted to be around were normally older. And even in
mm.
school, I wanted to be around the teachers. So while everybody else was trying to be each other's friends, I was like, I'm trying to be the principal's friend. I'm trying to be my teacher's friend. They got the power around here. Y'all are just all
Ah,
together.
there
So
you
that
go.
was the leader in me that was
Hmm.
drawn to leadership. And
Hmm.
so I was different. I was the type of kid that I remember Smuckers in Memphis had came and they needed a spokesperson for, Smuckers grapes and jellies and all that.
Please, all stuff right.
And so they came in. They said, oh, we know exactly who needs to be our spokesperson. Well, they knew who needed to be a spokesperson because I was friends with the teachers and the principals. And so they said, he's our guy. And I would get on stage, I would come alive. I mean, it was like something just turned on. I was like a fish in water. I was very shy though, off stage and not in front of crowds and groups. You put me around a small group of people, I was shy. I perspired very heavily, so you could see my shy also. And so probably a bit even self-conscious in many ways. But as a kid, I knew that there was this affinity towards spiritual things. So I would watch while other kids were watching, cartoons and whatever else.
Mhm.
I was watching preachers. There was a preacher that came on TV on Friday nights. His name was Dr. Frederick Casey Price. He was in Los Angeles, California. He's passed away now, but on Friday night, people would literally say they walk into my great great grandmother's home, which the family is still in the family today, on Cellar Street in Memphis, and they would say, "Y'all, the Rev is watching Reverend Price." That's what they called me. They said the Rev is watching Reverend Price, and they literally would come in. So you got gang members and drug dealers and whatever else, and they said the Rev is watching Reverend Price. So everybody knew, be quiet. Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt. I took control over that house on Friday nights at 8 o'clock or whatever time it was.
Love
It
it.
was just something different. You grow up. We moved back to Denver in the adolescent years. We went back and forth for many years, and we finally moved back to Denver. And I was the same way. Was just different. And I eventually got into ministry through music. Started at the age of 12. I had a buddy of mine. He and I were very competitive. I'm a very competitive person by nature. I like winning. So it's not all about winning. Well, that's fine. You don't have to win. I'll win for you. But I like winning. I like accomplishment. I like achievement. It is something that drives me. And so in that, he got a drum set. Now I tried trombone, didn't like it, sax didn't like it, trumpet didn't like it. And he got a drum set. I went home, told my stepfather, and I said, I want a drum set. He said, so you don't even know how to play drums. I said, I'm gonna teach myself how to play drums. So we get in there, we go get the drum set, and I taught myself how to play. And from there, I was horrible when I started. I got good and eventually started playing keys and other things. And then later on, I've been inducted into the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame. And you mentioned all the other things. And so it's been a great journey. But, my childhood, I often ask people if they're familiar with the movie, What's Love Got to Do with It?
Of course.
Okay. I can tell story. I got to tell you this. I was so disenchanted when I learned that a lot of what was in the movie didn't necessarily match the actual biographical happenings. And because I know that movie like the back of my hand. And only recently I said, why do I like that movie? It became my way to cope with growing up in that, because that's how my stepfather was. He was an abuser. He was a womanizer. I would watch. My mom, I think, is just one of the best, most amazing women to walk the face of the planet. And because I watched what it is to survive, to thrive, to push your way through, to come out of an abusive situation. And she's my greatest fan to this day. She's an interior designer, amongst other things. And we were redoing this particular room. And I looked at my sticky pad. She wrote me a little note, love you, and all of that. She's amazing. But I watched her do that. And one of the greatest things she ever did for me, when people say, what'd your mom do? What'd your mom do? The greatest thing she did for me, she knew I was like a lion. And the thing about a lion is that if you try to keep it in captivity and you try to keep it caged up, it will never become what it's supposed to be. One of the greatest things she did for me is she stepped aside and let me roar. She stepped aside and let me develop. She stepped aside and let me do me. And that's one of the greatest gifts that she could ever do. She didn't smother. There's a difference between being a mother and a smother. She wasn't a smother. She was a mother.
All that makes a difference. Like, look at that journey. See, right there, you spoke about, there was nothing about you. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You had adversity, but yet you knew you knew that purpose early. And when I read in your bio that it says that you became an entrepreneur young as an adolescent. So what was that about? Like, what was that first business that kind of pulled you in?
Yeah. So same year I got into ministry, same year I started my first business, which was 12. Again, I was just different. So there was this bank in Denver called Young Americans Bank, still exists today. They had a special charter to offer financial products to kids under 18, of course, with parental consent. So I pioneered their business loan program. So I was the very first one. And in fact, to this day, and I told the vice president of the bank, y'all need to update y'all's marketing, but they still haven't done it. But to this day, I'm glad they have it. There's a second level of the bank called a M.A.Y.A town, where it's basically a town where high school students, middle school students, what have you, go in and everybody gets different jobs. You can be the TV manager. I'm sure now it's totally different. You're probably the AI guy, the tech guy, the influencer. I'm sure it's different jobs.
Right.
Exactly. But you would do different jobs. And it would be a simulation of running a city, of money, balancing your checkbook, like a life simulation. And every kid that goes up to that second floor, every entrepreneur that goes up to that second floor, they walk past a picture of me, hold it up, that original business plan when I was 12 years old. And I just think there's something so powerful about that, because one thing that I did at 12 still speaks to this day, so that every entrepreneur that's about to get their business loan walks past the Black kid who was the first kid to do it in a city of 4% African American. And I think that's significant because that's what my whole life has been. My whole life has been defying statistics. My whole life has been, it doesn't matter where you start, it matters how you end, it matters where you're going. And I
Mm-hmm.
think everybody listening, you got a similar story. Everybody's got a story like, I haven't seen it before. You're going to be the first. I haven't done it before. You'll be the pioneer. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
see this in my family. Well, that's because you're the curse breaker. So that's been the story and the journey of my life.
So I'm gonna think that in this journey is probably where you became the five-time author, and of course, lots of amazing titles in here.
Yeah.
We've got Life Weekly Devotional, Living in Favor Every Day. Then you've got your Healing Scriptures,
Yeah.
and then we also have your other books, which is History Makers, Sins of
Yeah.
Our Fathers, which I
Yeah.
definitely want to dive into that one, and the Making Money Moves, the art of
Yeah.
getting your finances in order. Definitely
Yes.
these two. I mean, they all sound like amazing titles. But when these two like just somehow resonated
Yep.
and popped out to me, because you know what most people think in their heads. Because right now you've already to me broken the mold of when people think of pastors and bishops. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot of people out there. I won't throw names out because
Hmm.
everyone's doing their thing.
Yep.
I think you gravitate to what works for you.
Yep.
And there is something about you that embodies the idea of humility, kindness, and there's nothing grandiose.
No.
And there's things about other pastors that often come across that way for people,
Sure.
which kind of turns them off because they feel like they're living this very high lifestyle, which for some people they feel like that's a contradiction to
Mm.
what is in the Bible. So with
Mm.
that being said, I love that you wrote these different books, but most
Yeah.
people would never think that a bishop or a pastor would be talking to you about how to be more financially astute. They're like, well, what does he know about that? Well, we just
Yeah.
found out. Clearly at 12, you had
Yeah.
figured out some financial stuff. So what do you
Yeah.
talk about in the book, Making Money Moves?
Oh my God. So let me tell you why that book is so powerful to me. It's the first book. It's the one I sat down and wrote that book in 3 days during a blizzard in Denver.
Oh, wow.
And I picked, and I just, bah, 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 bah. I went in. And let me tell you why that book is so powerful. So by 21, I built Denver simultaneously while serving in ministry. I built Denver's largest Black owned mortgage company. And so I don't know that anyone surpassed it since then. I haven't checked, but that's what we were told at the time. And over the weekend, no joke, I watched the entire industry collapse. So I wake up on Saturday morning. I leave the office on Friday. We're on top of the world, right? And figuratively speaking, again, my nature is I'm always growing. I'm always pushing to get bigger and better.
Hmm.
So on Saturday, I wake up and I see one of the banks that we use. I see that there's agents at that bank in Southern California. And I said, what's going on? Make a long story short, that bank literally just collapsed, shuts down. And then it's a domino effect. Bam, 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 bam. Well, if you're a broker, you use banks to get the deals done. And so if you don't have banks to get the deals done, you can't get the deals done.
True.
So I literally went from, I'm a movie guy. So one of my favorite movies is also New Jack City. And you remember the scene where Nino comes in after the infiltrate. So that's how I felt. I felt like I wanted to walk in with all black on with some Rottweilers and bam somebody in the
You
head
popped into
like
your ear, Nino Brown. You was like, hey, I'm ready.
the whole thing. I said, what? So the entire industry collapsed. It wasn't just our company. The entire industry went through a
Mm.
successive collapse. And I remember thinking, okay, God, how am I here? I believe in tithing. I believe in giving. And so I've done that since I was 12 years old. So I said, how am I even here? And I went through this process. And here's what I said, God, if you show me how to get out of this, I will teach everybody everything that I did to do the same thing. And that's exactly what I did. So in the book, I talk about how do you build successful businesses and organizations? What are good business principles? What are
Okay.
the mistakes that I made? Like I talk about the importance of not doing business with family unless they're good at business.
Say that one
Um,
more time. Say that one more time.
right, of not doing business with family unless they're good at business. A lot of the times people do things with family thinking, oh, this is my cousin, or this is my husband, this is my wife. Many times those things need to be kept separate because just because you trust them in this area doesn't mean they're proficient or trustworthy in another area. I
Mm.
talk about that. I talk about good business dealings. I remember I was subsidizing one of my investment properties and basically paying part of the rent because I just had some very bad tracking systems that were in place. Although I was studious, when you're making more money in 1 month than many people are making in years, decades, lifetimes,
Mhm.
sometimes, and it happens really fast. What happens is sometimes you don't have the infrastructure necessary, or the structure necessary to maintain that success. So I talk about all of those types of things in the book, so many lessons, so many principles. And literally I talk about how I gave my way out. I was the guy who, all of this is happening and I'm literally giving my way out. So I'm sowing, I'm giving, I'm being a blessing to people, and I literally gave my way out. And so God built me back bigger and better. But that book talks about that journey, like what the book talks about, what it is when you got to give up the things that you have accumulated, what it is to go through, having somebody else answer your phone. That's code for your phone got turned off. When I say somebody, everybody at some point has probably had somebody answer your secretary. The number you've dialed is not accepting calls right now. What it is to go through those moments. And so that's why I can talk even today. The people connected to Harvest, their financial empowerment is extremely important to me, because the Bible says that money answers all things. So if you have money, there's some answers. There's things you don't have to pray about because you have the answer. Like money should not be a struggle. And it's interesting to me that there's a cultural thing, and I may step into some stuff, but let's go. There's a cultural thing.
Step right into it, because that's what we do here. We step in.
Yeah, let's step into it, because for many people, it's only certain groups that they think are supposed to struggle and not have and not do well. But over here, your God wants you to do well. But over here, your God wants you to only get it when you die and go to heaven. Not so. That's called a slated gospel.
Okay, thank you. Because that right there, when people think like that, I was like, I'm not sure what God you're subscribing to, but that's not the God that I think I know.
No.
God is an equal opportunity love all God. So there is not, I want to bestow on one, but not give to the other. That makes no sense to me when people have that mindset.
Yeah, but it makes perfect sense when you contextualize it to how Christianity was weaponized, particularly in this country and throughout history, weaponized against groups of people, to where you're basically taught, live in hell on earth and one day you'll die and you will go to heaven. So manage your misery here. Yes. And then when you leave here, it's going to get better. We're going to have fun here. We're going to do well here, but y'all can't. Nah.
I can already tell this book sounds like a read that people need to have about if you're even thinking about wanting to start a business, you're struggling with finances. I feel like this book doesn't look at like, here's the how to do something. I think it gives you that deep dive, because I believe it's an emotional and mental experience when you decide you're going to start a business. It's the mindset. Yes. And it's like getting to the heart of why you want to do something and understanding the balance is important. I want to put this up. So everybody, if you want this book, here it is right now. They're offering a 10% discount. So you just go, you text Bishop, coach the 55498, and you'll receive the 10%. And of course, I've been putting up how to go to the website and you can get the books, they're ebooks you can download. See, to me, if you're even thinking about wanting to be an entrepreneur, get some enlightenment that goes beyond the idea of dollar signs, because that's not going to be the thing that drives you. Okay, so now I need to throw some things at you because I love this. And I'm like, gotta talk about this. You just said something. So I'm gonna use my string of consciousness in the sense that I'm menopausal. I'm 54. So a thought will pop up.
You don't look 54, you look great.
Thank
and
you.
not that 54 is bad. Let me be clear about that.
No. But it'll walk right out the upside of my head if I don't say it when I think it. You said something that, so for me, I grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic. Like literally there was Mass in Latin. And I was that kid that sat there and said, this isn't very logical to me. And I went to Catholic school, by the way, from birth to 12th grade. And I would sit there and say, because one, Catholicism does not open the Bible, by the way. They just kind of give you the information, right? But you have religion class and things like that. And I remember saying into the class, something's not logical here, because you're trying to tell me that Cain killed Abel, but then he left the Garden of Eden and he went and found a wife. But you just said there was nobody else. Who are those people? How did he get a wife? And I was told to be quiet, and my mother was called. So, because I'm not supposed to ask the questions. I then asked another question one time, and this did not go well. And this was in high school. I said, I have a hard time with someone telling me that Christianity was a positive thing in the US, when if a slave owner was allegedly a person or a child of God, how could you possibly own slaves? But two, the treatment was egregious. There's no way that you could have been a slave owner and been a child of God and thought it was okay. Please talk to that for me, because I was told it was just a matter of, it was a cultural thing. I'm like, God is not about culture. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you hit so much, and let's like a lawyer. Let me go point by point, and let's litigate the matter. So first thing is, we got to understand. I'll start with your ending. God is not subject to culture. However, culture subjugate God to them. Meaning,
Mhm.
why are the images that we see of Jesus, whose Hebrew name is Yeshua HaMashiach? Now, let's just do some basic Bible 101 stuff. He's a Hebrew, right? The Middle East wasn't called the Middle East until post World War II. Before that, it was called North Africa. It's
Okay.
literally on the African tectonic plate. That region of the world where there's war going on right now is literally on the African tectonic plate. So just by definitions, right? There's just some basic definitions. In that, he's a descendant of David. David has a son. His name is Solomon.
Solomon, right?
Solomon in the Song of Solomon describes himself, and I love doing this stuff. Solomon describes himself. He says, "Behold, I am black." That's how he describes himself.
Mhm.
That's how Solomon describes himself. Okay. So if Jesus is a descendant of David, David has the son, we have some basic stuff about the fact that Jesus is a melanated person. Now, why do we see that there's images of Jesus that look to be very European? Well, that's because Pope Alexander VI makes this first imagery of Jesus after his son, Cesare Borgia. So all of the images that we have of Jesus are as this white European individual that has come to save. So let's fast forward now to how culture is often weaponized. When we go back, and let's just go to America. I could go back to Council of Nicaea with Constantine and
Mhm.
how certain things were chosen because Constantine needed something more powerful than military might to subjugate the people.
Mhm.
In the Roman Empire, there was this pantheon of different gods. It's this Greco-Roman multifaceted culture where they had a different god for every different day. Like, they literally create temples. This is to the god of the unknown because we just need another god for this, and we need a god for this, and we need a god for that. And there's a god of fertility, and there's the god of eyelashes, and the god of lips, and there's the god of this, and there's the god of funk. You know what I'm saying? I'm being facetious, but
No,
there's
I
the
do.
god of everything. They just
Right.
created a god for everything. That being
Right.
said, what would happen is that when they were deciding what would go into what we call the canon, as that decision is made, there are certain things that are intentionally eliminated because they're not fitting the cultural narrative of where we see the creation of a Christian nationalism, which is that this is the official religion of the nation, of the empire at that time. Because Rome had a bunch of different emperors. I mean, they
Mhm.
keep getting put up to power, slain, put up to
Mhm.
power, slain, put up to power, slain, put up to power, slain. Constantine was like, y'all ain't gonna do me like that. I need another way to control these people. And so, as a result of that, you see the Edict of Milan, which legalizes
Mhm.
all religions. And then you see the Council of Nicaea, and
Mhm.
from that, which says Christianity, this is now the religion of the empire. Now, some people look at that and say, see, you can't believe in it. You can't trust any of it. Well, that's only if you subscribe to the ideology that man is more powerful than God. Because if you subscribe to that ideology, then I could see how one could say, I got to throw all of this out. I don't believe none of it. None of it's true. But the reality is, that was simply how culture tried to subjugate God and create man and create God in its image versus the reverse, which is that we're created in his image. Let's fast forward to America. You get to America, you've got these persons who you have decided that need to be enslaved, right? So you come here, the stated reason is to escape religious persecution because you've got a king in England who has made himself the head of the church.
Mhm.
Right. So he says, I'm the head of the church now. So whatever I say goes. And the reason I'm the head of the church is because the Pope won't give me a divorce. I'm trying to lead this woman. Pope won't give me a divorce. Therefore, I'm the head of the church now. Right. I mean, come on. Like, this is this classic, American principles, right?
Right.
So I'm the head of the church. And so this is England, of course. I'm head of the church and all of that. I know it's a history lesson, but I wanted to give some context because I know you
But
got educated
well, the
people.
thing is, you need to give the history to
Yeah.
make the content to make it make sense. So
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep. Yep. So you get to America, and in 1619, you see the first enslaved individuals brought to Americas. And I say enslaved, not slaves, because they weren't slaves, they were enslaved.
Mhm.
And they revolt because slavery at that time in America wasn't limited to Black African Americans.
No, it's not.
It was it was individuals that were more of an indentured servant type, where they would
Mhm.
work for a period of time, and
Mhm.
then they were able to purchase their freedom. It was normally connected to debt. And so that's why debt was always seen as a negative thing, is because debt literally was physical bondage. Throughout the
Yep.
scripture, you'd see where, one woman goes to Elisha, the man of God, and says, the creditor is about to come take my sons and make them slaves and work. And so you see these two groups, the enslaved Africans and the enslaved whites, you see them revolt together and work together to overthrow these landowners and overthrow these slaveholders. So what happens? They said, we have to create a system, because if these two groups of people start working together, they're about to topple our economy. So here's what we're going to do. Let's create race. Because everything up to this point has been ethnicity, a Spaniard, from France, etc. Let's create race. If you are Black, you are less than, right? So they would tell these poor whites, you're better than them, right? So now you help us to keep them in check. You can eventually be free. They can never be free. You see the system created. So, but again, there's more enslaved people than there are slave owners. So what do you need to do? You need to teach them that this is the way God wants them to be. Because if we can enslave you in the mind, I can do with your mind what shackles can never do.
Exactly.
Right. So let me teach you. This is what they began to do, the slave gospel. They began to say, you are supposed to be like this. God wants you to be a slave. God wants you to be a good slave. And not only that, your life is going to be hell on earth. But when you die, and if you look at a lot of the Black church experience, it's all about dying and getting to heaven, dying and getting to heaven, dying and getting to heaven, dying and getting to heaven. It was an escapist mentality, because the goal was, let me live, let me just survive this life, and it's going to be better in the next life. Wow. You would see the slave owners enjoying this life, not concerned about how they treated people, how they would rape and pillage the women, how they would sodomize the men, how they would abuse the families and separate the families. And they would do it in the belief that, well, we're superior to these people. None of that had anything to do with God. God was weaponized. Christianity was weaponized against a people. And that's where somebody like me comes in. That's a liberator. That says all of that. No, 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 no. God is right. What these people did and what these people said is not right. And you can see it happening today. What these people did and what these people said is not right. But separate God from these people who weaponize God. It's just like somebody that might take a clip of your podcast and use it and twist it a certain way to make you say something you didn't say. Well, you're not bad. The way they twisted it is the challenge.
There you go, right there. How when you hear people say those kind of things, if you hear a person who swears, I go to church every Sunday, I go to Bible study, and yet you see that reflection of somebody who is racist or so on and so forth, you have to question their authenticity when it comes to faith in God. There's no place for that. And when people try to rationalize, and I've heard them do it, and I'm like, they have no idea just how, Christian nationalism, remove that national and focus on the Christian part, and you'll be okay. So that's right now, especially right now in this country, it's being pushed really hard. And I actually have some concern, because I feel a lot of young people are being pulled into this. I'll be honest, I had never heard of Charlie Kirk until what happened. I had never heard his name, even though I guess Turning Point is at major universities around the country, kind of spreading this, doing recruitment, these types of messages. I'd never heard of him. Now, mind you, I do not agree with what happened, regardless of, I may not agree with what he said, but no one their life should never be extinguished that way. But the kind of dialogue, I get concerned that so many people just follow because they don't understand what a true leader looks like.
Right. Right. And I think the interesting thing about that, I like to study history, if you can't tell.
Everything you just said, Council Tennessee, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a history buff too. I love this.
Yeah. Okay. So you get it. So I like to study history. And while this is new in our lifetime, it's not new in history.
No,
every empire goes through this phase. And what's really interesting is it's normally right before it no longer becomes the predominant empire of the world. Every empire goes to this phase. This was the end of Rome when Rome did this. This began their end. It wasn't just their death. It was the fact that they weaponized God against people, and to use it to prop up this system of, where you've got these elites and you've got the king, et cetera. So, just for those, because I know you maybe have some people saying, well, where's the scripture? Because I'm proud to be you can be proud to be an American, but don't think that being an American means that you're a superior Christian. There's a scripture, John 18:36, super simple. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. So Christianity is not about nationalism. It's not about political party loyalty. You're not more of a Christian because you vote Republican. You're not more of a Christian because you support a particular ideology or not. Full disclosure, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I'm an independent, but
that's me too. I feel the same way.
But that, and I agree with you. It's become so pervasive now. And even as a leader of people from all backgrounds, one of the things that I've noticed especially recently, is just how delusional. I'll just be very frank about it. Many people have become around these issues,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll normally pull out their one or two things. Oh, I got strong views on abortion. I got strong views on gay marriage. Okay, okay. Let's just set that over here for just a second. So, how do you ignore all of this over an allegiance to a couple of issues that, if you really want to dig into it, even that there's some cognitive dissonance, because how are you pro-life but you don't say anything about innocent people who are gunned down in the streets of America by the hands of people who are protected? That doesn't seem pro-life to me. So is it pro something else? Why are you so worried about what's going on in other people's bedrooms?
You know,
What does that have to do with you?
and it's interesting because what you just said is the thing I think people struggle with. And being able to say, if you say you're pro-life, then that means you should want to support and protect all of life.
All life.
All life. So if your only agenda can be that, it's like that doesn't make sense. And I think contextually, a lot of things that people have gotten lost. I like the fact when I look at your church stuff, I definitely see, I love that it is multicultural. I
Yes.
think that is a beautiful thing. I love that I see a lot of young people and youth,
Yes.
because I feel like they are in a world that they probably have not had the greatest foundation at this point. This younger generation, I hate to say that, I think they've gotten lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
And I think they're very easily led. And as we hear about things like they feel lost, there's now something they talk about, the male loneliness epidemic, where they're
Yes.
saying that men feel ostracized. Actually, when I looked at the research, and I'm never one to kind of classify these things necessarily by race, I felt like a lot of the study was kind of more about white males. I don't
Mhm.
know that it really looked at the totality of all men. But it's interesting that they're saying they don't feel there's a place for them. They don't
Mm.
feel that they don't know how to, speak to a woman. And I was like, well, where do we lose all these skill sets? And why don't you feel like you belong?
Right.
Do you feel your youth ministry is really kind of growing and seeing right now in this world that they're living in? They're seeing how there's definitely a disjointed message when it talks about faith and God.
Well, I think one of the things about Harvest that was a little bit different about us is I used to, growing up in church, when we were in church, in Memphis, we were sort of what we call Baptist Gospel. We weren't really super involved. When we moved to Denver and I got involved, I got started on the church staff at 12. I've been in it. I've been in it since then. And so I'm not new to it, true to it. And I noticed there was always this disconnect. You had youth over here, adults over here, this great chasm in between. So what would happen is often when young people would become, older, what have you, they'd be a disconnect because they really wasn't their church. So what we did was something very different. I said, I want this to be the church where a mom can serve next to her daughter. A dad can serve next to a son, or whatever the configuration is. So we actually, one of the things different about us is we have our young people actively involved in the life of the church. So it's theirs, not their moms. It's theirs, not their dads. And so I say that because I think that's an important thing, just to contextualize how we do it differently. With that being said, you're right. We reach every background, every age. Our demographics really stretch across a breadth of buckets, if you will. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that there is a hunger, and there is a hunger for truth, and there is a hunger for, okay, don't just tell me, show me. And so that's why, again, I like to be systematic. I like to be strategic and how I present the information, because I want people to be well taught. I want people to be well learned, and I want people to be able to walk out and be able to speak articulately to whatever the situation or circumstance is, and know that they've got accurate information. And unfortunately, we live in a culture where so and so said it, so it must be true. So and so
Yeah.
said it, so it must be true. So and so's
Yeah.
got a lot of people, so what he's saying must be right. Not realizing, Hitler had a huge following.
There you go. You could do
Just
a
a
list. Yeah.
following doesn't mean that you're accurate.
No, it doesn't. Historically,
Yeah.
you can pull tons of leaders that had following. Believe it,
Right.
some people may have followers, but maybe they're following in fear and not faith,
So
because they
true.
don't have a choice.
So
Okay,
true.
let me throw something at you that I will often hear people say, and I always smile and say, okay. They'll say when something's going wrong, they say, you know what? I'm just going to let Jesus take the wheel,
Ooh.
and I'm not, and let Jesus handle this. I was
Yeah.
like, what's your response to that when people say that?
Yeah, I think there is sometimes, and I want to speak really candidly about that. Sometimes Christianity, depending on how you're taught, can create an escapist mentality of having to deal with anything.
Mm.
And what happens is anything people don't want to deal with, they just throw it on God. Anything they don't want to accept responsibility for, they throw it on the devil. The devil made me do it. The devil is busy. The devil's attacking. Is the devil attacking your marriage, or do you all just not know how to communicate well? Is the
Mm.
devil attacking your body, or do you eat stuff that you shouldn't eat? Like, which is it? Right. And that's not to say that one can't be true, but what we created is this boogeyman. And I often, when I'm teaching, I call it Christian atheism, where you believe, you talk like a believer, but believe like an atheist. Because most of what people are doing, it's like, what do you really, what are you really saying? Step back
Mhm.
out of the antics of it and the platitudes of it and the Christianese, and what are you saying?
Mhm.
So to your question, when people say, something's difficult, okay, I'm gonna let Jesus take care of it. Great. But if you study Jesus, while he was a healer, yes, miracle worker, yes, I believe in all that. I believe in all the supernatural. There were still things that people had to do. Like there's a story of this woman with an
Mhm.
issue of blood. She's got this issue for 12 years, 144 months. She finds her way to Jesus. She touches him in his garment. She's healed. All right. Now, we could get into lots of levels of that, of why the issue was there, all of that. She had to make the decision to get out of the comfort of her home, to take a step of faith, to do something she had never done in order to see something supernatural happen in her life. So I think what happens for many people is it becomes, I'm not going to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to address it. I don't want to handle it. But what God empowers us to do is to deal with it, not to be an escapist to where I'm just running away from all my problems, running away from my issues. He's the empowerment to deal with my problems, to deal with my issues, not the escape artist like a magician to get you out of it. He actually wants you to deal with it, to conquer it.
See, that's my mindset.
Yeah.
It's just you are given tools to navigate things. And yes, it might
Yes.
be difficult, but if you put your faith in God, you're going
Yes.
to move in the right direction. But it does
Yes.
not mean that all of a sudden there's no work. Like I love
Right.
when people are like, oh, we blessings. I'm like, well, where okay. I don't know. People just say things occasionally. I'm just kind of like, "Hmm, okay.
Right.
It's not
Right.
for me to correct you on that. So I have to let you feel that way and go that way.
Right.
All
Right.
right. My last question, not about this particular topic.
Yeah.
A lot of people I have seen sometimes will feel like those weekend warriors when it comes to church. They're there on Sunday, but I often feel like Monday through Saturday is not a true reflection of
Mm.
of truly if you're embracing and walking in the light of Christ. So with that said, this episode is called Learning to Live the Life That Embraces Faith, Passion, and Purpose.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, Bishop Foreman, walking in faith is not easy.
Mhm.
It's easy to lose sight of things because we live in a
Yep.
very demanding and difficult world.
Yep.
What do you say to people when they're like, I want to walk in the light of, Christ, but it's hard because there are so many things coming at me. How do I
Mhm.
navigate these things?
Yeah, I think it's just what you just said. It's a daily thing. And I think three takeaways real quick. One, the Bible says that I give you the choice this day, life, death, blessing, curse. So every day we're given choices. And those choices produce consequences. Those choices produce destinations. A lot of people say, my destiny, my destiny. Well, your choices decide your destiny because your choices decide destinations. And so in that, every day, I got to make choices today that were better than yesterday. So I'm in competition with yesterday's version of myself, no one else. Second thing to that, when it comes to walking with God, walking in faith, it's a relationship. So every relationship has nuances. Every relationship is different. Every relationship is not going to be the ecstasy stage that you feel in the first 90 days of getting to know somebody romantically. Like first 90 days of getting to know somebody romantically, everything is great. Every red flag, you bleach your white. Everything that you should look at twice, you're like, oh no, it's just
No,
looking right.
no, right.
And then it begins to wear off. Same is true in your relationship with God. It's a daily walk, a daily journey. And there are going to be days where you're like, I killed this. And there's going to be days you're like, oh my God. It's like, if you read the Bible, this is what happened in the lives of people. David, one psalm you read, he's on top of the world. Next psalm, oh Lord, why have you forsaken me and left me out here today? Like you look at Jeremiah, one day, Lord, I will do this. Lord, I'm great. Next day, like, Lord, I hate this. Why was I born? Cursed the day he born. The day that he's born, the whole thing. When you look at the humanity of people in the Bible, it helps you to understand it's just that. It's a daily
Mhm.
journey. You're going to have some days you feel like you were amazing at it, and some days you're going to be like, whoa, what was that? Just like a relationship. When you view it through the lenses of relationship, it changes what feels like failure in your walk with God, because this is a relationship. So every day I'm growing. It's usually to the final thought I have about that. When you see yourself as a son or daughter of God versus just a subject of God, but when you see yourself as a son or daughter and you think like a parent, then that changes the dynamic of the relationship. Because when you mess up, you can run to your daddy. And when you got an issue, you can run to your mama. When you have a challenge, you can run. So when you see yourself, when you see him as father and
Mhm.
you as a son or daughter, it changes that dynamic because you already know what's up with me. You already know my issues. You already know you. I don't have to pretend with you. You're my father. You know all of me.
Mhm.
Clothes on, clothes off. You know all of me. Thoughts. You know all of me. So I don't have to pretend. And I think the reason it's such a challenge for so many people is because it's performative
Yes.
Christianity. It is, I got to do these things to be a good Christian versus because
Um,
he made me righteous, I am righteous. I can live
that's
righteous.
that's interesting. Performative Christianity. You
Yeah.
said something in how I look at faith is I always tell people that I look at faith as a mindset versus a belief
Mm,
because I feel I have to approach it very methodically because there will be
mhm.
things that will attempt to attack it and challenge it. And I
Yes.
have to frame my mind to say, okay, this is negative. My faith tells me this, though I'm being challenged
Yep.
by that. I'm going to
Yep.
shift my mindset so I
Yep.
can see that for what it is versus just saying, I think often people believe I'm believing blindly. And I think
Mm,
it's difficult to walk through the world blindly. But if you walk through the world with purpose and intention and purpose, you have a direction and you're not moving blindly. So I
yeah.
look at it as faith is like a mindset for me.
Yeah. If I could add an analogy that I think is helpful to that is no, it's not blind. I mean, but there's a scripture says we walk by faith, not by sight. So the by is the key word, which means I just have to put on filters. That's
Mhm.
it. That change the way I see everything. So one example, Romans 8:28, one of my favorite scriptures. And we know that God causes all things to work together for the good of them that love him and are called according to his purpose. Translation, I have pronoia. Those are my glasses. Pronoia, the antithesis of paranoia. Paranoia says there's a conspiracy, everybody in the world is out to get you. Pronoia says there is a conspiracy, but everybody out here is here to work for me. Everybody out here is here to help me.
Mhm.
Everything's working together for my good. So it becomes a filter. So even when I see something bad, my filter says it's good. Even when I see something that feels negative at first, my filter says flip that, look at that differently. It is I call it the divine delusion, because what I do is I'm not denying reality. I'm just denying that I have to respond to it the way that you say I have to, or the way that it says I have to. I remember my grandfather passed away pretty unexpectedly almost 2 years ago now. And so in that moment, great man, amazing man. He actually served in the ministry as one of my associate pastors. He was a great man. And so in that, while we're preparing for all of this, of course, it's like any human being, I have my moment. But then immediately, boop, my glasses are on that this is a win. This is a victory. This is something that is a good thing. And we have to take the good and
Mhm.
move forward with that. And I think to what you're saying, mindset, it's the same thing. It's just simply resetting the way things are set in front of me. I love that.
So this is a good way to kind of transition over to talking about the sins of my father, generational,
Mhm.
curses. One of the things that I frequently talk about people in therapy is that you have to, I'm all about mindset, mindfulness, and people often don't fully understand what mindfulness means. It's not about
Mhm.
meditation and yoga. That's what people think when they think about mindfulness. And it's interesting because I said almost everybody sits in therapy a lot. Not everybody, because they're dealing with generational curses, trauma, or even generational poor behavior.
Oh yeah.
And part of what they need to do is to break that cycle
Yep.
in order to live their life more fulfilling. But the hardest part about that often is, Bishop, it might mean that you're going to have to let some things go in your life that you
Mhm.
feel like you must keep in it because
Mhm.
you've been taught, well, you got to this, blood is thicker than water. You know what?
Mhm.
It's always this. Okay, it's not necessarily always thicker than water because family can be anyone who loves you.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be biological. So tell me a bit more about the book, The Sins of the Father, Breaking Generational Curses.
Yeah, you know what? I love everything that you're saying. One, I could pick out everything, but this would be like an 8-hour episode. So I'll get right to your question. But it's what I love. I love being able to have intellectual and spiritual conversations because most people separate the two.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to be separated. God, omniscience, omniscient, omni, all science, knowledge, knowing. There's nothing to know that won't eventually take you back to God. There's nothing to study that won't eventually take you back to God. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important for some because some people feel like they can't be smart and spiritual. They can't be intellectual and
Mm-hmm.
spiritual. They can't be pragmatic and practical and spiritual. And that's just not true. But the book Sins of the Fathers opens with a story that is actually about my stepfather. he never met his biological father. His biological father was what he became. He was a womanizer. He was an abuser. In fact, his mother, in self-defense of herself, when he was attacking her, that's how his father was unalived and no longer on the planet. And in that, my stepfather became exactly like this man he never met. So there's when you talk about a curse, most people sometimes when they hear that word, lots of things can come to mind. Some people think of ooh, spooky ghosts and goblins and witches with little pointy hats and cauldrons. Not so. A
Right.
curse is simply an empowerment to fail. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Generational curses are destructive patterns of behavior that are passed down and they're passed around, which means it's not just about the bloodline. It's about what you're around. What you behold, you
Mm-hmm.
become. And so in the book, I use him as the opening story. And he's now passed away about a year and a half ago. So prior to him passing, I just said it's the opening story. It's a true story. Now that he's gone, not for any other reason other than just being mindful of that. That's the opening story. And in the book, I walk through how these things work, how they affect us, and how every single person alive today, you're literally alive to be the curse breaker. Wherever these empowerments to fail were in your family, you will be the one that breaks that. You'll be the line crosser, the boundary breaker, the history maker. And it's a very practical walkthrough of here's the spiritual principle. And I hear some people, I don't believe in generational curses. And I say this, you believe whatever you want to believe. I don't fight with people about what they want to believe. You can keep whatever beliefs you want to have. That's
Yep.
just not my issue. I'm not the product. I'm only here to point you to the product. So you don't have to believe anything I say. That doesn't make me a difference one way or the other. Here's what I do say. Just check your family, though, because I can tell you they believe in you. Generational curses believe in you. Just go check your community. Check the people you grew up with that are still in that same hometown. I can guarantee you generational curses believe in you, whether you
Oh.
believe in them or
Mm-hmm.
not.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book is a real pragmatic way. How do you walk through it? How do you break it? And it's also incorporating from my own story, the generational curses that I have broken and the ones that are still in progress. Because I live life as a student. So every day I'm growing. I'm competing with yesterday's version of myself. I haven't arrived. I'm always becoming. And because of that, I can keep evolving and keep, defeating those generational curses. So, and I'll just say this last piece. The book is written really short
Okay.
because I want men to read it because they say men won't read. And so I wrote the books to be, all of my books they're going to be very informative, very entertaining, very full of wisdom and knowledge, but they're also going to be short enough to where if you're like, I'm like, okay, I don't really like doing a bunch of reading. You can read this book, literally, you can read the book in a day and be done.
You said something that I've never thought of it that way, but it's spot on. You think about the word empowerment and you only think it in a context of positivity.
Mhm,
But in reality,
mhm,
absolutely,
mhm.
negativity can be empowered with the word.
Absolutely.
And I never
Absolutely.
really thought about that. So we know that you do your podcast,
Yeah.
which again, love it, fantastic. With the podcast, is it something that's weekly? How frequently is a podcast? Is it like a set day of the week, things like that?
Yeah, great question. So we do what we call daily pop-ups. So that's like our daily thing. And so it's a daily dose of everything that you need. Like, and they're random times. So what's really cool, people get the app, they get a notification, then we go live. It has been the most efficacious thing. I started doing it just to figure out a good time to go live. We started doing that, and people are like, we like that. And so you've got that in that app. You've got music, messages, I call them life-giving messages, which most people call sermons. I call them life-giving messages. To me, a sermon was something you heard when you did something you weren't supposed to do. So, so we call them life-giving messages that are available for people. There's audio, there's video, there's a ton of resources that are
Mhm.
available. Literally, you can pick a series. I teach in series, so think of it like a
Uh,
Netflix series.
mhm.
Go pick your series and go binge watch. Pick your series and binge watch. So, like right now, as you and I are recording this, and when this airs, we're finishing up a series called Pop the Balloon, which is about relationships and dating and marriage
I've
and
been
all of that.
watching. I've been watching Pop the Balloon. Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. And so that's so you literally can go to our YouTube channel, go to our app, pick your series, binge watch it. And on all types of topics. I believe
Man.
in being a 360 person when it comes to life. So I'm teaching about finances and fitness and relationships. And I talk about, and one of the things
Mhm.
in one of the books is about how I lost, now it was 95 pounds. I was like 120 pounds that I shared all naturally. Like to me, the gospel is good news and the good news is the bad news is wrong. So everything we do is all about that.
Love it. So everybody, there's so much here that you can fill your repertoire with to be able to learn some things. Remember, right now there's 10% off the books and different merchandises there. You just have to text Bishop to 55498. And remember, I told you they have plenty of really awesome swag. Look at all that good swag. And this is not, by the way, people, this isn't it. You need to go to the website because there's so much there. There's mugs, all kinds of things. There's other, different apparel that you can buy. You can also get the ebooks there. So everything. You can't go wrong with getting a discount. And I'll be honest, Bishop, I kind of feel like everything you've got in there is actually very, very reasonably priced, to be honest.
Right,
So you're
right.
being super gracious with the 10%. I might put up quickly about the app. So if you want to, obviously see the podcast, all those different things, you can get the Harvest mobile app, which you can find in the Apple. It's on Apple TV. It's in the Apple Store, Google Play, obviously on Roku and Fire TV Stick. So people, realistically, there's no reason you can't get to it because it's right there and you can take Bishop Foreman on the go. We talked about the 5 different books that you should check out. There's History Makers. There's also Sins of the Father, Breaking Generational Curses, Making Money Moves, which I feel like everybody really needs to take a hard look at that one, along with the other like Life, Weekly Devotionals, and Healing Scriptures. So many good things that if you are looking to do some self-discovery and begin that journey of your spirituality because you felt like you're just not finding a good landing plate, here it is. Start with this. Take a listen. This is the thing that's wonderful right now about social media and internet. You can get so much content and information that can be positive that maybe isn't available to you where you're at. Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe you haven't found that congregation that really resonated with you, but boom, here's one and you can find it online. So many positive things. What are some parting things you would say to my guest, about just living with, faith, purpose, and passion?
You know what? One, let me just say again, thank you for having me. You do amazing at this. And I don't just say, I'm not saying that to patronize you. You do it, man. As you're going through it, I said, she is on it. This is amazing. Thank you again for what you're doing. I would leave everybody with 3 things because I think when you're talking about living a life that embraces faith, passion, and purpose, to embrace something means to welcome something, to pull it close to you. And those 3 things can all work together. And I would say these last 3 things. One, you still have a pulse. God still has a plan. And life's not over yet. The best isn't behind you. It's here and it's ahead of you. And people always say, oh, but I made this mistake. So what? But I had this issue. So what? I love studying other people's lives. I love biographies. And what's the most interesting thing is to see how many people their lives didn't really begin into their 40s, their 50s, their 60s. How many people who the first half of their lives, so to speak, people figure it out, whatever, but it was in that second half. And when you think about sports, it's the second half that wins the game. It's the second half that matters most. And that's number one. You got to post there's a plan. Number 2, I would say to everybody is all the answers you want are already around you. Sometimes we're praying for God to send something and it's already been delivered. What you need is the awareness to recognize that your answers are already around you. This podcast is an answer for somebody today because they got something they needed and they were like, that's all I needed. All I needed was one idea. All I needed was one shot. All I needed was one moment. And the last thing that I would say to those as they're moving forward is at one step changes everything.
Everything.
You've heard a lot. That's great. I'm sure people have said, "Ooh, that's good," a lot. I'm sure people, I call it stank face when you hear something real good, but your face looks like something stinks. I'm sure everybody's had those moments today because we've had an amazing conversation about a lot. I'm sure everybody's had those moments. But what are you going to do? History rewards those who take action. Success rewards those who take action. I want to say something real bold. God favors people who takes action.
Who
Here's the
take
scripture.
action.
It says,
Yes.
blessed are those who do what they heard me say. Blessed are you if you do these things. So what is the one thing you're going to go do something with? And it might just be getting the book. And full disclosure, all of the proceeds of my book sales always go to church. I've never taken a dime. So rest assured, I'm not trying to get $9 out of you or $10, whatever it is. I don't have a $10 motive. Okay. I've always given that's just me. Everybody's different. I've always done it like that. I've never seen a dime from that. And that's just me. I'm different in that way. But I say that maybe it's getting the book. Maybe it's listening to the podcast. Maybe it's listening to this again. Do something with what you've heard. And when you do something, you're going to see something. that you've never seen
You
before.
gotta get up, get out, and do something. You
There you
got me
go.
in a mood today. You started talking about New Jack City and Boys in
Yeah.
the Hood, and now I'm like hearing, I'm, I'm hearing Nas with one mic. I'm like, he's got my brain just rolling with music that's inspirational. That people probably back in the day didn't even see it that way necessarily.
So true.
But good stuff. Thank you so much. I know you are a
Thank you.
busy, high demand individual. Thank you for taking time out to speak to my listeners. You shared a very powerful message, and I guarantee you, whether they're new or returning, there's been plenty of nuggets and takeaways on having you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And listen, guys, hit me up on social media. If something was shared today that bless you, I get 700 messages a day, but I actually respond. So it may take me a minute, but I actually respond. I'd love to know that there's something bless you. It's at Bishop Foreman on all the social media platforms. Just look for the blue check. If you go to TikTok, there's like literally 100 fake pages of me. So I take it as a compliment. I used to be mad about it. Now I'm
Really?
like, this is great.
Oh
We
wow.
got
Well,
another page.
that's a compliment. You're doing something that people want to emulate, right? So
Listen, I
hey,
said I stopped being mad about it. I just said this is working together for my good. So all is well. But I would love to hear from people. And again, thank you so much for having me. Love what you do. Keep going.
yes.
Only eternity will tell the lives you've impacted.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody, the amazing and nothing short of doing God's work and doing it with conviction and intention, touching and changing lives. And that's what it's all about. So, as you know, I always thank everybody for tuning into the podcast. It's a whole process. It's about purpose here. I want to help you to identify those ambitions and harness that motivation that you're seeking to improve your everyday life. So remember, never fret. If you missed any of the episodes, including this one, they're always to be found. You can always find me on in iTunes, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audibles, Spotify. Pretty much, if it's a podcast platform, you're going to find me there. Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. Of course, you can always listen to episodes on my website, MayaJazzSpeaks.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and make your life even easier, because right there the episodes get posted. And if you're social with me, you'll equally know it as well. Everything is at M.A.Y.A Speaks to You via Facebook, IG, and X. I'm thinking I'm going to have to graduate up from X people and probably put TikTok in the rotation. I'm feeling like, or Snapchat. I think X might be coming out the loop, but right now it's there. So that's the key stuff. Remember, on the website, there's some key things I do there. Wednesday is the big day where I post a couple things. I have 2 blogs, as you know, that I am super, super passionate about. The first is my menopause blog. So what you're going to find on the website, when you get on the landing page, you can choose to either listen to the podcast there, the Me on Pause blog. By now you should know I am the poster child for menopause. And so I am bringing tons of information to women about the menopause transition and how it impacts their life, specifically often from the mental health standpoint that's not talked about. Fellas, you should go to the blog too, because if you have a wife, a mother, a daughter, and anybody like that that's going through the transition, you might understand some things about their behavior that you didn't understand before. And fellas, I have not forgot you, because you have your own version of menopause called andropause. And coming up this year in 2026, I'm going to start rolling out some information for you too, because you know what? It's more than you guys just having a midlife crisis. You also go through a hormonal change just like we do. An easy way to keep track of everything that's M.A.Y.A, you can always just get the app. You can take M.A.Y.A on the go. It's the M.A.Y.A experience. It's available in the Apple Store and the Amazon Store. You can scan it here. But of course, if you just go to those different locations, you put in the M.A.Y.A experience and the app is going to come up. All right, everybody. I have absolutely loved everything about this particular episode. We touched on so many things, and it was a first in me kind of just, going out the gates, flying blindly and seeing how it goes. But this is what happens when you have these absolutely amazing guests. It's not that hard to do. So with that being said, until next time, everyone, remember, your present becomes your past and your future is no more. So live every day to the fullest. Don't take anything for granted. This has been episode 90 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, the return of the Ambition Show with our guest, Bishop Kevin Foreman. Until next time. And I'm going to tell you, it only gets better. And our next guest, we're going to have on, we already had Bishop Foreman on. I made a mistake there. We have on Tori Cascanegra. And this is going to be amazing because he is a dating and relationship coach. And he's all about dating with intention. Something that a lot of people don't understand. And I just, and then I came on popping the balloon. So now for everybody who's struggling with dating, by the way, between when you hear what Tori has to talk about, and if you go check out Pop the Balloon with Bishop Foreman, I think you're going to understand that maybe the way that you've been moving when it comes to your personal life and dating has been a result of what it is for that very reason. All right, everybody, until next time, stay safe, be amazing. And of course, hey, be you and don't worry about what other people think.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.